The Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Ornowitz.
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Kotar.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Mohammed.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Boyd. 6 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have 2 items before the committee today. That would be Board Bill 97, as well as a discussion with Trisha Gordon from United Way related to Prop S. She is not here at the moment, so we're going to move forward with Board Bill 97. Alderman Vaccaro, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On the face of this, you would think, why? Why would you be doing this?
You have a committee?
Oh, yeah, I do. And I'd like to put the committee substitute in front of us. As a member, I would ask them.
Making that as a motion.
Yes, I'm making that as a
I
motion.
second.
Been moved and seconded that we place committee substitute for Board Bill 97 before the committee. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Ornowitz.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Kotar.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Mohammed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Chairman Kennedy.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Pam Boyd. 6 yes votes.
By your vote, we sustain the motion. Alderman?
So the reason I took this on was when UGAS decided that they were going to sell out to Mobile on the Run or the Wallace Company, which is also a reputable company, we had to go through plat and petition, and there were no complaints. There were no problems. In fact, when we went out for plat and petition, everybody was fine. They were used to doing that. It was just a 6 to 8 week process. In the county, all the UGASs were done in 1 day. They do it different out there. They don't do plat and petition. It's the council member, or in our case, it would be the alderman for the area that basically says, about a liquor license, how that, So all this bill is, and all I'm asking is for reputable companies to be able to sell their business and not go through the disruption of being able to sell liquor. The one case in particular that comes to mind is Walgreens. All the Walgreens sold. And if they would have made each individual Walgreens at the time go through plat and petition, it would have been a big issue. At the time they elected to do exactly what I'm asking to do, the liquor commissioner at the time said, look, we'll just have hearings if there's no objections, but if there's an objection, we'll make that particular Walgreens go through plat and petition. But that I know of, they didn't make, because I know the one in our neighborhood, they didn't make them go through plat and petition unless there was a problem. This bill just simply does that. If the Marriott Hotel changes hands, or one of the hotels change hands, they have to go back out and go through plat and petition. This doesn't eliminate the hearing. There's still a hearing. If you're a nuisance property, and that's what's in here, if you're a nuisance property, you have to go through everything. This is for operators that want to sell their business, that actually operate a business and have had no problem in the community. And the people in the community still have the same say, other than the plat and petition, they have the same say. Now, if you're a new business or a new liquor license, you go through the whole 9 yards of plat and petition and everything. But if you're an existing business in good standings with no calls, and I believe we got it for 2 years, then you get a pass on that, and you will end up then still having a hearing. So there's still the opportunity for neighborhood organizations and neighborhoods to say, no, we don't believe they should have a liquor license. But it does help move the process along quicker in areas where it should be. So I would open it up to questions. I think there might be one more change because the liquor commissioner's here.
Can you review what has been changed in the committee sub?
Well, I might ask Jeffrey to come up with that, but it's really page 3, line 12. Let's see if it's struck out. And I'm sorry, I count on a lot of people to do this, but page 3, line 12, and it has to do with the license transfer application shall not require, so it's in bold right there. Let me see if there's another change. I might have you. Okay, yeah, Jeff's gonna.
I'd worked with Alderman Vaccaro on doing the substitute, and basically starting on page 3, line 12. From listening to some of the colleagues, it wasn't clear in the original bill on the process, and so this makes it more clear. Basically, they have to meet every qualification as a new applicant. Also, it states in here that if there's any nuisance behavior, then they have to go through the whole process. They're not exempt from it. It states that if they've been issued summons, and then on page 4, it just brings more clarity to the whole process. In a nutshell, this is meant to support businesses that are trying to sell, retire, move on, maybe to a new business venture or just, moving on, period. And to make it as easy as possible. Now, the city does have a transfer section where if you are a next of kin, or you are a partner in the process and you pass away or something like that, they'll just transfer it to the next of kin. There's no petition process, there's no notification. It just happens with the approval of the excise commissioner. And this is almost working the same way, with the caveat, though, you can't do this if you're under a nuisance. Also, it must transfer with the same conditions. So if the community says you must have cameras, you must have well-lit space, whatever conditions that are currently on the current licensee, everything has to transfer 100% exactly. But it does not present, and there's a caveat in here, it does not prohibit new conditions being placed on the new transferee. And I did speak with the excise commissioner, and we can have him come up, but there was a little bit ambiguity as to how much it would cost. And the initial thought is it would cost the same much as a new application. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't just be a seamless transfer.
That was that was brought to me just right before this, that something we may have to just add in there as a committee substitute, because we didn't put in this there would be a fee, otherwise it would be a cost impact to the city on it. So there would be a fee, the same fee as if you were applying for a new license.
Okay.
And the benefit is it certainly makes doing business with the city a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. We can entertain motions, questions from committee. Alderman Ornowitz?
Just a couple, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. So as long as you have a business, a bar, and you transfer, there's been no complaints about it, it's fine, so you eliminate running the plat, but as you say, I'll give you a quick question. QT in my ward at Loughborough and Gravois, it's always under a nuisance problem because, you have kids come in there, hang out till they run them out and things like that. And I just say, so they would actually still have to go through the process.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, but just the places where everything's been fine and no complaints, we're just trying to make it easier for them. And then down the road, even though it changes, everything's fine, if it becomes a nuisance problem, then that's when it gets involved with the excise office then.
And mine again comes back from you guys.
Right.
I went out and did the plat and petition, which was almost on the side of ridiculous. I couldn't make this up. We went out and gathered signatures. It wasn't the commissioner that we have now. I went out with Leroy Grant. I think everybody knows Leroy. Because I said, we'll go out and get him. So there was a lady who signed that she was fine with it, right? We took it back. They said the signature didn't match the one from 3 or 4 years ago. So we went there and talked to the lady, and again, you're going to ask, well, why? But she filmed, this is me, this is my driver's license, this is me signing the plat, and the liquor commissioner at the time, the ladies who were up there said, the signatures still don't match, we're not going to take it. I was like, yeah, but here's a movie of her showing her license, signing it, saying, this is me, and they still didn't accept it. Now, we had enough signatures without her, but just because, over 4 years, her signature wasn't exactly the same, I couldn't tell you why, but, I mean, it was almost near embarrassing.
Yeah, okay, and I get it, and, if we can make things easier for people, especially wanting to bring a business in the city, it just seems like you jump through more hoops than, the circus, and from what I understand, the county has a simpler, when you go through trying to open a business and things, so, I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with it. It helps, and there's no problems. I don't see anything wrong with the bill.
Well, this is a group that's trying to basically legalize marijuana, and we want to fight decent business people that, and again, some of the bigger companies that, these are opinions, but I like I said, I believe this is a good bill. I believe it still protects the neighborhoods.
Okay. Are you completed, Alderman?
Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
No problem. Alderman Coulter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Vaccaro, I had a chance to look at the committee substitute here. My constituents have a lot of concerns about this. Obviously representing downtown and Soulard, we have a number of bars and entertainment complexes, and often have bars that have problems, right? And the process for revoking a liquor license is quite arduous. We've gone through it recently in Soulard. It took a year and was very expensive. Oftentimes, the best recourse and way to get rid of a problem bar is to get people to stop going there, and that puts them out of business. So the ability for that bar owner to transfer a license, and I get you've tried to address some of that with your nuisance stuff, and I appreciate you doing that. They still have a number of concerns. So I have some questions. First, I'm going to ask about, I guess, UGAS, which sort of precipitated this. Your committee substitute doesn't seem to address, and thanks for providing the excise code, 14.06190, new petitions for corporations, which sets forth the provisions about, when liquor sales are incidental to the business. In the case of UGAS, I don't know. I'm actually going to ask you, maybe the excise commissioner needs to answer this. In the case of a gas station, whose, I guess, primary function is selling gas, do you consider, is liquor incidental to that business, or is that their primary function? I mean, so in the under 190, with if 15% of the stock changes, there's a sale of that entity, it's within the discretion of the excise commissioner to waive the platinum petition process if liquor's incidental to the business. Do you know? Did UGAS try to go that route?
We went up to, and it was the acting liquor commissioner, so no. We were told we had to do it. I asked, is there any way around it? They said no. So, I mean, yeah, the answer is, and I could bring the liquor commissioner up for the answer to the other question, but the answer was no, they made us do.
Okay, and your committee sub, as proposed, doesn't address that provision, so that would still be, so I guess, if you have so we're going to have some conflicting provisions here now, because you're changing a number of sections discussing transferees, but not this section. Does that need to be addressed in this bill? It probably should be.
Alderman Coulter.
Yes.
In a nutshell, what the bill is saying is that the current operations of that business, 100%, the way it is today, will be how it needs to operate after it's a transfer. If there are conditions about being well lit and lighting and so on and so forth, that's part of it. If your requirement with gas stations, for example, They have gas stations, convenience stores. And in order to sell liquor, you have to have over 1,500, I think 1,500 or 750, X amount of product.
Yeah.
Okay? So a person that license transfer, though, is still restricted to those particular provisions, period, dot. The only thing this is doing is making an exception for a good business that wants to sell. That is the whole intent, and that's why I was trying to be covered throughout here. If there are any conditions that are placed upon that business, that travels with that. However, it does not prevent the SISMH from adding additional requirements. So, for example, the community says, well, I really wish that, they would close at 2 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock.
Right.
That could be a provision.
But so I guess under your bill, how would the community know about if there's a sale happening and a seamless transfer of the license? This is not a problematic business, but hey, the neighbors have some concerns about hours of operation or something. If they're doing a sale, how is the neighborhood going to have any knowledge of that process and of that sale and the opportunity to add more conditions if there's no plat and petition or hearing, even a hearing, that provides the neighborhood with some notice?
That's a good question, because I thought that was initially part of this, and as I'm scanning through,
I don't see that in here.
But that is something that I would support, that I think should be required.
Okay. I'd be more comfortable if you still had maybe a posting requirement, hey, this is proposed to transfer.
Right.
To give neighbors an opportunity, and not a plat and petition process necessarily, but an opportunity to have their voice heard in a hearing.
Right.
I think that would make me a lot more comfortable. I think that would make my residents a lot more comfortable.
Because
That was my intent to, I think,
we
but that's
kept
not in
going
here.
back and forth on the verbiage
I agree.
for quite some time, and then I think something got lost in the translation. But the whole intent was whatever requirements that you have to get a new license is the same requirements that you would have with the exception of the plat and petition. However, notification should still be part of that particular process, and so the substitute can easily be amended in order to reflect that.
And then I think all right, so then I guess that alleviates some of my concerns on that front.
But I want to go back to something real quick and make sure it's clear, because your statement was that you have some problem businesses, and businesses downtown in Sula will have issues with them just transferring license. It won't work for those problem businesses. That is covered in detail in this.
Right.
And all it takes is, 1 or 2 911 calls to be a nuisance or be issued a summons.
Right.
And all bets off.
Well, so then I guess that was going to be one of my questions. We'll just jump to that. On page 3, 2B, where you discuss, 2A discusses disorderly places. I'm not aware of the excise commissioner ever making that. I'm sure they have the authority to make that finding. I've never experienced that in my short tenure down here, the excise commissioner finding a place to be disorderly. The second part, though, we do encounter the nuisance, the problem properties process. But I guess we often, many businesses, so I guess my understanding of the problem properties process, they'll get a problem property, will get a letter from the city councilor saying, hey, we've got complaints, we need you to come in here. But that's not a summons.
But that's reason to find that they're disorderly, because they've been issued a letter saying that your property is...
Or maintaining okay. So what is, I guess, issued a summons for engaging in a nuisance or maintaining a nuisance pursuant to this ordinance?
Right, because let's say, for example, that a drug dealer is standing out front and, this is like the second time they've had to deal with that drug dealer. So then the police officer can issue a summons to the business. Hey, look, you need to go to court. It bypasses, all that stuff of going to North Patrol or South Patrol, whatever, the police station and having the little friendly owners meeting. You're going right to court.
Okay, so this says subject of a summons. Does that mean that they have to be found guilty of being a nuisance or just accused of being a nuisance property?
If you get a summons, that means there's a problem.
Okay. See, I don't know that that's clear here, where it says licensed property has been the subject of a summons. I think maybe issued.
I would say, that's probably what you're going to say anyway, if it makes you feel better and you get a little bit better language in there, we want it to be a good bill.
Yeah.
So if you want to say been found guilty...
Well, I don't necessarily want that, because oftentimes that, a problem property or problem bar will drag out that nuisance process as long as they can, so they don't take a finding of guilt, in the nuisance property process. So I would,
Still in the process.
Yeah.
Because they're fighting it.
right.
And that's why being the subject of a summons is a little easier. Because if you're in court because, you're a problem property, then you shouldn't be able to transfer that license.
I agree there. I guess my issue is probably with the word subject of a summons, because I don't know what that means. If that means you've been issued, are you a subject of a summons if the neighborhood is thinking about if the police are thinking about issuing you a summons, or if you've been issued a summons?
If you got issued a summons and your name is on it, you're a subject of a summons. So now I'm not a lawyer, I just play one. But I mean, certainly, just simple. If you get a summons, then you're a subject of a summons.
Yeah, okay. On the fees part, I know that Alderman Vaccaro, you mentioned that, I guess, at the start. That's obviously not addressed in this bill. But yeah, I would, if this is going to get through the board, I would, obviously, I think it would be ideal to still have the same fee as a new license.
Right, it needs to be added in.
Right. Well, I mean, the excise division has a hard enough time as it is with enforcement. To put more work on them without any sort of licensing fee, I think would be tough. Okay, there was another section I wanted to ask you about, another transfer section. So this committee sub deals with sections 06, 020, 05, 160, and 165. A previous iteration addressed 330. So this new bill doesn't talk about 330, which is the section on license transfers, which basically starts out with no license issued under the provisions of this title shall be transferred except, and then lists how a license can be transferred. So we're adding a bunch of ways it can be transferred, but we're not addressing those in 330.
Now, in 330,
Are we
I don't have in
repealing?
front of me, is that the one where if you're next of kin, they
Yeah,
transfer?
that-
Yeah, this
yes.
is ancillary to that. This doesn't, it's kind of a separate or new piece to that. And when I talk to the excise commissioner, it's almost like, it's more like a sale of the license.
Okay.
Because that is pretty much what they're buying that business, but they have a right to change the name of the business.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that's all.
And in that scenario, there's no publication about anything. It's a seamless transfer. No one even knows. At the end of the day, we want good businesses to be able to, make money, do well in the city, and sell out and move on and do what they want to do without jumping through hoops. Because if you're in real estate, there's a term called time is of the essence. And you can lose out on a deal. And I know you deal with real estate as a lawyer. You can lose out on a deal because too much time has expired. So while you're running around here trying to find people that may be dead, you don't know, people haven't seen them in quite some time, communicate with people out of town, the clock is ticking. And some people may have a requirement that if this isn't done by 90 days, 180 days, then the deal is off. And then you have the seller who's harmed in the process. And when you have a good business operating in your community, I think it's our responsibility to help them as much as possible. Now, if you're a bad business owner, then we need to help them get out of business as fast as we can.
Agreed. One more question, if you guys don't mind. On the last page, 4 of 4, we've got C, D, and E here. C dealing with, I guess, the type of business. D with the classification. When you say classification, do you mean like whether it's a wholesale license, a full drink license, a distributor's license? Is that what that's referencing?
Basically, whatever license that they have, and that's covering all the different types of licenses, if you're deviating from that, you're going to have to go through the whole new petition process.
Okay. And then in C, and this may be for the Excise Commission, I don't know if you guys can answer this, do they currently, if they're issuing you a full drink license, for example, with, privileges to serve on Sunday, on that license, are they classifying the type of business you are currently? Do they look at whether you're a tavern or a restaurant? I mean, do they keep these classifications?
You either have a package license or drink license, and with caveats, and the excise commissioner can come up here and attest to. But normally, if you're a restaurant or you're just a bar, you're going to
Right.
have a drink license, then you can't sell package, and if you're a package, you can't offer drinks. In some wards, in order to get your liquor license, you have to have food, you have to be a restaurant. So if you got a license with the conditions that you have to operate as a restaurant, then you have to operate as a restaurant. And if you transfer and you're no longer operating as a restaurant, then that voids that, because you're not operating within the same parameters, which a license holder right now.
Yeah.
If they start operating outside the scope of their license, then it can be revoked.
Right, but I guess if I've got a full drink license and I'm a bar and restaurant and food sales are going miserably and I just want to sell booze, currently, unless that's a specific condition on the license, as long as I stay in operation, I'm still selling alcohol.
I think it's a question for the excise commissioner, yeah.
Yeah.
State your name.
My name's Miles McDonald. I'm the excise commissioner for the city of St. Louis. In response to your question, Alderman Kotar, yes. If they're required to sell food, particularly if the place is open on Sunday, they have to serve food.
Okay.
And we list the premises by the type of places they are.
You do, okay, so you have very,
Restaurant, bar, it doesn't impact the kind of license you have. But you could get a full drink license, not be open on Sunday, but will still indicate if you're a restaurant bar.
okay, and so under this proposed change, if I'm a full restaurant bar with no nuisance violations and I want to sell my business, I'd be able to transfer, that would transfer to a new entity, but it'd still have to be a restaurant bar.
Yes, sir, right.
Okay.
That's my understanding of the bill.
All right, thank you, guys.
We'll check on the bill I got over there that Scott's doing for me.
Alderwoman Spencer,
I'll come right back.
any questions? We're going to come back to Coleman. We're already.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. Let's see. I guess I'm still a little bit confused as to, kind of agree with the Alderman from the 7th. It's confusing why we would add provisions for transferring licenses in a different section, but not address the section in here which specifically addresses license transfers, because there are some situations in here that kind of lend itself to transferring of this nature as well.
Yeah. Let me ask our attorney, the wisdom behind that, to clarify.
If you could-
Woman, do you mind telling me what specifically you're pointing to here?
Well,
With the whole fact that there's a
Right.
transfer section in the code.
per questions put forth by the Alderman from the 7th, the section here, 14.06.330, license transfers. It seems like we're injecting some provisions to transfer the license in a completely different section when we have a section specifically for describing the situations in which we're allowing a license transfer. So it kind of makes the code a little bit confusing if there's two sections which describe situations in which we're allowing a license transfer.
Right, but they're addressing two distinct types of transfers. So, and I'm looking for where you are, and I'm sorry that.
I'm looking at page 33,
Oh, you're
what's
looking at-
what's designated page 33 in the ordinance. I understand that these are different types of transfers, but if we have a section entitled license transfers, it would seem that we would want to put all the
Let's see where she has license.
circumstances under which we could transfer a license in the same section for clarity and kind of comprehension.
This section is actually amended so it's the language that allows for the transfers based upon the conditions set forth herein. This section, the one that you're referring to in the current ordinance, that section was revised. So all the other transfer, the other means to transfer a license under that, those all still remain. However, there is the addition of the transfer based upon the conditions that are set forth in the proposed bill.
When I'm looking at the description of the ordinance, it says it doesn't mention that section in the description of the ordinance revising And I don't see anywhere in here where it describes the changing of that section.
Bear with me for a moment, please.
What I don't want is our code to be any more confusing for the general public to understand than it needs to be. These microphones are very sensitive today.
1406, 320. And I'm looking for it, and I apologize, but I'm not reading it fast enough here. So what was added was the transfer, and so none of these have changed, but I'm looking for 1406, 33 over here.
That's the question.
Yeah.
So it's not, so it needs to be clear.
No. Okay. We can clean that up.
It needs to be clear.
It needs to be
Yeah.
clearer.
So it will be within that same transfer, which is code 14.06.330. So it would be at the end of that particular, in that section like that. So that's, it will be amended to reflect that.
Continue with the question. Did you had any other questions?
And then I had a couple of other questions. Looking at what exceptions we're making, businesses that sort of wouldn't get a transfer pass, if you will. And I apologize if I missed this earlier. The first provision that would disable a transfer would be if it's on this list of disorderly places that is established by the commissioner. How, and I see a reference here to some part of our city code that's not included in our packet here. So how does a business get on that disorderly place list? And is that list a public list? Is that a list that we could have access to, or but business owners could know whether or not they are on that list?
Well, what the excise commissioner can do is contact, like Sergeant McLaughlin, who does all the task
sure.
force and different things, and inquire, or contact, they're in the public safety department, but contact, what department is that issues the nuisance letters? Whatever department issues the nuisance letters, you can contact them, pull that address up, and let me know if there are any issues, because it's not as simple and easy to issue licenses. I mean, there's a lot of work that the excise commissioner staff do, scanning, checking for signatures, all that stuff in platinum petitions. So the department working together, they're all part of the public safety department, they just access that information and find out, doing their due diligence.
But that list, is it public in any way? So would a business owner be able to have access without calling in, or would neighbors be able to know whether or not the restaurant or bar in their neighborhood was on that disorder? What I'm trying to understand is what gets you on that list, and how do you know you're on the list?
If you get a nuisance letter at your business saying that
Yes.
you've been found to be a nuisance, then there's some disorderly, and they cite certain things on there, then you're disorderly.
Well, that's, yeah, and I see that the nuisance list being the second provision. I had never heard of this disorderly place list, and so perhaps that's something that the excise commissioner can describe, the list that the excise commissioner puts together how a business gets on there, just because
Well, it doesn't
it's
say there's a list, though. Where are you asking for a list? It says the licensed person has been found
you're
to be
right.
a disorderly place.
Oh, you're right. It is, you're right. I misread that initially. So this is just, I guess this is just a sort of a discretion of the excise commissioner? Okay.
Right.
Okay. Then one question I have regarding this nuisance, we have some establishments within the fabrics of our neighborhoods that are maybe next to homes and things of that nature, and because of their situation within a residential area, often get calls more maybe than regular businesses might, being in close proximity. And a lot of our businesses end up being on the nuisance property list because, just because of a couple calls. Is there a provision to, what I don't want to do is disincentivize a business from kind of being, or disincentivize putting these local bars and restaurants on the nuisance list, which is helpful in other areas because they might want to transfer a liquor license. Is there a waiver type of, we had discussed this at the last hearing, I remember, is there unless there was a sign off of, so to speak, from the captain or maybe the, I don't know what that would look like, but I think that the majority of establishments that sell liquor in my ward are on the nuisance list, not all of which are because they're nuisances, but because they have calls for service from time to time based on their close proximity.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's unfortunate that some businesses are labeled as a nuisance just because people like to come there and hang out.
Sure.
At the end of the day, what we don't want to have happen is people keep flipping licenses.
Sure.
You know, oh, I'm on a nuisance, so I'll just flip it to somebody else and get that off me, and then they'll flip it back and do all that kind of stuff. And that's why there's a requirement, and this says 24 months. I thought it should have said 12 months, because 12 months is what it really should be, not 24 months.
We're making notes of these changes.
Yeah. Then my last, I guess, the 190 provision that was mentioned earlier where the excise commissioner is given discretion to bypass the plat and petition process for businesses which sell liquor as a small percentage of their overall business. Is that provision, maybe this is, I think this is a question for the for the excise commissioner, but I'm curious how often that provision is used currently, if at all?
I have never used it, and the only example I could give of liquor being incidental to your overall business, it'd be maybe a barber shop or a salon or something like that would get a liquor license, which happens. When that happens, typically their business increases, and it becomes more than incidental even to a business of that nature. So I don't think a liquor license is actually incidental to any business.
So then, in that case, my concern with that case would be that it becomes an issue and becomes the main source of business. Is there an easy way to revoke that quote-unquote incidental liquor license?
No,
In that case, there's not.
the liquor license.
Okay.
You have to go through the same process of revoking any other liquor license.
I think it would be helpful to have maybe a list of time, if that provision is actually used, just because I was never aware of it, and I don't think many members of the committee might not have been aware of that previously, and it certainly is concerning if we have a bypass mechanism that could be used and then sort of taken advantage of, if you will, if the business, if it's, if you're a barber shop, in your example, you get a liquor license and then you decide that selling liquor is more profitable than cutting hair, then all of a sudden you've switched your business model, but you have a liquor license and you didn't have to go through the plat and petition process to get there.
No, I think you do.
No,
You still have to go.
You still have to go through.
if it's incidental to the business, no, that's an exception to the.
Right, but what I'm, in the example that was described, you described, if you're a barber shop, you describe liquor as incidental to your business.
Right.
You obtain a liquor license, and then you decide that the selling of liquor is more profitable than the cutting of hair, and you now are a bar, you've got a liquor license, and my question is, now that liquor is no longer an incidental part of your business, is there a mechanism to revoke that liquor license based on the change?
No.
And so I think that is a concern here that I wasn't aware of in our liquor code, because that could certainly be taken advantage of by anyone, really.
Well, it's a judgment call on the excise commissioner if they want to issue a license based on that. And as I just said, I don't think, if somebody wants to sell liquor in a business, they're selling it to make a profit. I mean, that's would only be common sense. They're not selling it to accommodate their customers, or they could give it away. So I think I have never done that since I've been there. I've had people ask me about that to kind of circumvent the system, and I just don't see that as liquor sales being incidental to any business.
Without a description, I mean, I'm pointing out that I have a concern that it could be used.
Oh, sure.
And I have to commend both sponsors here, or acting co-sponsor, because I think anytime we can make opening and operating a business easier in the city, that's a very good thing. We tend to put up a lot of roadblocks to small, locally owned businesses that make investing in our city unattractive and more difficult for folks. But I also know that the liquor license problems that I have in the 20th Ward are more on the opposite end of the spectrum, in which we have problem business owners and problem liquor purveyors for which we have a very difficult time revoking that liquor license. And my main concern here is that we're making it easier to have and transfer a liquor license without doing the opposite and making it more easier to address problem businesses as they exist currently within our communities. And that's just the concern I have at this time. But I also do recognize the value in trying to address this particular issue. And that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
This addresses that.
Let me make sure I'm clear. Is your concern that you have some businesses that are good businesses but are on the nuisance and they wouldn't qualify?
That's
or?
one little concern. My main concern, though, is that we have a difficult time currently under our code and what we're currently able to do addressing problematic liquor businesses in the city. We have several issues in and around the 20th Ward that we don't have the tools right now to address. My concerns with selling liquor are on the opposite end of the spectrum, with dealing with the problem businesses rather than helping keep businesses here. We have a lot of liquor sales, and I do understand that this is an issue, but where I would like to spend energy addressing and updating our liquor code would be then to give us tools to address those currently problematic businesses that currently exist in our community, for which we have a very, very difficult time dealing with.
Yeah.
Almost impossible.
To that point, I think we should be considering legislation whereby we really take a look at the percentage of signatures that are required to revoke a license. I like the fact that maybe we should focus on a certain percentage of owner-occupied spaces. Because people that live in Texas and outside the city of St. Louis, they're not impacted. It's the residents and businesses that are right there that's most impacted. And so that is something that, I'm considering, but I'd support somebody else, maybe, Alderman Coder or one of our esteemed lawyers can help with that. But look at our code and focus more on the people who are negatively impacted, because their signature is more important than somebody out of town. And I think that might help us deal better with some of the problem properties.
And I think for our constituents is we consider making one aspect of obtaining and retaining a liquor license easier. I know the question has been in my neighborhood meetings, why aren't we doing more to address the problematic liquor license that are out there? So there's kind of a yin and a yang here, and if we are spending energy making it easier for some, we ought to expend a similar amount of energy kind of making if we can. I know we have very limited resources down here at the Board of Aldermen, and this is not any.
And to your point on that, Alderwoman, it's a double-edged sword. You have some businesses that are clearly doing illegal activity. Not only are they selling liquor, but they're selling drug paraphernalia and different other things that we would wish they not, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they're selling guns, whatever it is. There's more than just liquor that's that negative behavior. But then we have good business owners who are doing everything within their power to run a good establishment, but certain criminal activity within the community gathers at their place, outside their space. They're not inside doing things. They're on the outside. They're even on the sidewalks. And I'm dealing with that in my neighborhood, and it's very challenging to try to support a business that does have a liquor license and is labeled as troubled. They have the best camera equipment. They have, they've hired security. They've done certain things, but people continue to gravitate because what we don't have control over is other people's behavior. And that is the big super challenge that we have. So you got over here, there's a good business. How do we support a good business is that the police cannot stay there all day. And they cannot afford to hire an off-duty police officer all day or security all day. But they're doing everything that we're asking them to do. But for some reason, Pookie and Ray and everybody else are still gathering, causing problems. And it's not fair to them. And then you have, again, the business that's over here that do not care. I've been to some of my businesses in my ward, and I said, hey, look, people out on this parking lot, I've sat there for over an hour, and they're doing certain things, and the guy told me, well, that's not my problem. That's outside. I said, oh, no, it is your problem. And so I had to educate him. But, okay, they're identified as a nuisance now. Right. But obviously that person is not cooperative. And then you have owners that are cooperative. So I think this whole thing about liquor, we have to be sensitive to what's actually the problem at the end of the day.
Thank you.
I mean, this is good conversation. I'm glad we're having this because it is bubbling up some challenges that we all have across our whole ward, and we don't want to pigeonhole anybody into a box of negativity.
I agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Alderman Cone, any questions?
I didn't think that we were taking this up today, but I feel like this is a solution in search of a problem. I hear we're trying to solve a problem with this bill. I have yet to have a business that has a difficult time getting a liquor license. And in fact, our former colleague from the 21st Ward, when we were debating a liquor bill several years ago, pointed out that the city of St. Louis actually has one of the lowest fees for obtaining a liquor license out of any metropolitan area in the country. So, places like Chicago, I believe he quoted Chicago, it costs around $20,000 to get a liquor license. St. Louis is a very affordable place to obtain a liquor license. I think we have a lot of liquor licenses in the city of St. Louis. And certainly, when that's associated with a prosperous business, that's great. I'm going to call a spade, and there's a lot of businesses that have liquor licenses that aren't doing a very good job of managing their business. And the alderwoman from the 20th ward mentioned, some in her ward and surrounding areas. I would be the surrounding area. And there's, in particular, a business that's a gas station convenience store located on South Grand that I've been trying to get their liquor license pulled for 2 years. And every few months, I start to get emails from constituents that they've sold their business, which then, should trigger, another patent petition process. But the guy is either selling it in a very shady manner or isn't selling it and spreading rumors because he's telling people that he sold the business. But he's still there. He still shows up to meetings with the excise commissioner and the city councilor's office.
We're going to get you an answer.
I mean, this is, I really don't see what the problem is that we're trying to solve here.
On that particular issue, Alderman,
Go ahead and talk about it.
I just subpoenaed the bank records, and it's in the name of the person that is on the liquor license.
Right.
So, I mean, we've done everything possible
Oh.
to prove it if it's been sold, and now we're getting information from the gas, or from one of his competitors, that the gas purveyor that's located in Oklahoma, believe it's World Fuel, said that he has sold the business. And I put a call out for the salesman and for the people that, for the main office in Oklahoma, and I'm getting nothing back from them. So, I mean, on the bank accounts, we have all those.
Right.
It's in the name of I think it's Ali, maybe is the last
Right.
name. And I don't know where else to go from there.
Well, and you're doing a fine job, and your office is doing a fine job, and so I don't mean that to denigrate your office or the work that you're putting into this, but this bill specifically does absolutely nothing, in my opinion, to help neighborhoods that are really struggling to manage these issues. And I would personally be hard-pressed to vote for something that makes it easier for businesses such as the one that we were just discussing to continue operating with a license when they're creating great harm.
But they couldn't. Under this bill, they couldn't. You have to be a good operator, and you can't have had any problems in over 2
So
years.
in theory, right now, this is already in our city code. This disorderly place is already in our city code, okay? So there's already definitions for this. There's already a process for this. And these types of businesses are still operating even in our current environment,
And so there's
okay?
a problem.
And so
that we
this
need-
bill,
We need to address that problem.
but what
This
is the
speaks to
problem
the
that you're
good-
trying to address? Because I have
Well-
yet to have a business that has had a difficult time getting a liquor license in the city of St. Louis.
Okay, it started, and I know you weren't here at the beginning, but it started with UGAS for me.
I heard that story,
Okay.
and I heard that you had one
Okay,
person,
I'm gonna let,
you had one person that they couldn't verify a signature for, but the UGAS still has its liquor license, correct?
but in the county, they did 32 of them in one day. In the city, it took us almost 2 months. And it was hanging up that sale because the way that went down, the ones in the county, the Wallace Company bought all the UGASs and dirt cheaps all at one time. And the way that went down was that in the county, it was one meeting of the council, and it was done. In the city, it rambled on and on and on, which was holding up the contract. We had to keep going back and asking for extensions to see, it was a lot harder than it should have been. When Walgreens sold, and you had multiple Walgreens at one time, I don't believe they made them do plat and petition. I don't know. I'd have to
So
go back and look.
the situations that you're referencing, though, these are large multinational conglomerates.
Right.
And I find it very difficult to believe that, extending a process to protect residents, neighbors, property owners around these businesses has a financial hardship on Walgreens,
No, but. I'm
or
just saying,
UGAS,
it's not very-
So if this was more directed at, restaurants and bars, which are generally locally owned and generally, very much more of a slimmer profit margin than a gas station or convenience store, I can understand that. Making it easier for businesses that actually have a challenge financially, I can understand that. But, making it easier for businesses that, I'm hard pressed to name a convenience store in my ward that isn't underneath a cease and desist. I don't know about my colleagues around the table, but pretty much every single one of the convenience stores that's in my ward is either currently or has recently been underneath a nuisance.
Alderman Cone, I want to make sure that we stay focused on what we're actually trying to accomplish here. You know, this bill does not impact, we're not addressing any nuisance behavior that's going on in the community with any troubled location.
You're making it easier
what
for
we're trying
nuisance
to do-
businesses to continue to operate
What we're
with a
trying-
license.
What we're attempting to do is make it easier for good businesses that are in the city of St. Louis, regardless of the type of business that you are, to sell their business. That is the whole purpose and intent of this particular legislation. It is not to address anything outside of that particular realm. And while you can say you have never had a store, you've never had anybody have a problem getting signatures, I'm sure there are aldermen in other wards that can say, no, I've had challenges. And the reason why we end up doing legislation is because some alderman has a particular issue that affects multiple wards in the city of St. Louis. It can only be 3 or 4. But we'll do it across the whole city because sooner or later, the problem that I have, you're going to have. And so this is to support good businesses. And if we have a policy that we are a welcoming city, that we're open for business, and that we do whatever we can to help you and to help expedite you opening, then I think that we have a responsibility to the business community to be supportive in that aspect and not make them jump through unnecessary hoops.
Questions of the commissioner,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, how many liquor licenses are there in the city of St. Louis?
I'm going to say about 1,000.
And of those licenses in the city of St. Louis, how many of them come up for renewal due to a change in business ownership?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have those figures with me. I wasn't prepared for that today. I would say maybe 10%.
So 100
I would
every
say.
year?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So, and do you know by chance, I mean, how much does it cost to get a license in the city of St. Louis?
It's a non-refundable $450 fee when you come in the door to apply. And then each license is different.
Right, depending upon,
Right, what kind you
What-
get from manufacturers, it's $750. Obviously, certain licenses, you wouldn't charge them the $450, like a picnic license for a charitable organization. That's nominal.
Right.
I would say. I have the license fees if you want me to. Get
well, are you familiar with other metropolitan areas and how much they charge for licenses? So a similar size metropolitan area, like Kansas City, how much does Kansas City charge for their liquor licenses?
Same, Kansas City, Missouri, and I'll tell you why. There's a state statute that says a city can only charge 1.5 times what the state charges.
Okay.
And the problem with the liquor license fees is Missouri is pretty much a rural state outside of St. Louis and Kansas City. Some areas are building up, Cape Girardeau, Springfield, but it's pretty much a rural state. And there's been no move to actually increase that amount, and it has to be increased at the state legislature.
So how much does a Memphis charge?
I don't know. I know in California, I had some dealings with a situation in my law practice where a guy inherited a liquor license, and he was trying to sell it, and I told him, I said, you can't sell a liquor license. Well, I was wrong. You can, because they have a limited number of them. And he sold it for over $100,000, just the license.
Right.
They're privileged to go in and
Not
get-
the business,
Right,
just the
privilege to go in and
license.
get that particular license.
So is there a cap on the number of licenses that a city can issue in the state of Missouri?
No, sir. No.
So, and how many licenses are revoked on an annual basis in the city of St. Louis out of the 1,000
I don't-
licenses?
Since I've been there, none.
None.
No.
Of any that have gone out for renewal, have any of them failed to obtain a renewal?
No. I put some of them on restriction, where they have to come in every month to get renewed, and if there's a problem, but
But everyone's been able to renew their license?
So far, yes, sir. Right.
So out of the 1,000 licenses that we have in the city of, thank you, Commissioner, I appreciate your answers. So again, going back to just my opening statement, I feel like this is a solution in search of a problem. We have 1,000 licenses in the city of St. Louis. We have, 10% of them that, come up for renewal because of a change in ownership of the business. We have 0 that have been denied. We have 0 that have been unable to obtain a renewal when a change of ownership. So and we have the lowest fees in the entire country. It sounds like, $100,000 just for a business license in California. Chicago, it's in the neighborhood of $20,000. And we're under $500 for a liquor license in the city of St. Louis.
Alderman, what is the problem with trying to be more helpful with businesses? I'm so confused at where you're going with in your.
I have no problem being helpful. I sit on the planning commission, and we just voted out, new conditions for conditional use for businesses. I have no problem being business friendly.
What is the problem?
I think we need to be conscientious of businesses in our neighborhoods as well. And so we have to find a balancing act, and I don't see how this helps my neighborhood.
How does this create a problem? Let me ask you that.
I'll leave it
How
at
does it
that.
create a problem? Because you said it's basically opening up opportunities for problems.
Because
how does it create a problem?
some of the things that you all have defined in here to address, quote unquote, the nuisance issues.
No, we're not addressing nuisance issues. That's what I keep trying to say to you. You're not being focused on what we have
There's specific language in here pertaining to
Those
nuisance
are prohibitions.
businesses.
Those are prohibitions to the transfer.
That's what I am trying to, if you would give me the opportunity, I'm trying to answer the question that you posed to me.
Go ahead.
And so, I realize that this is not a nuisance bill, this is a liquor license bill, but in here it specifically states that it shall not be passed along if it's underneath a nuisance, if it's, deemed a disorderly place.
Right.
Those are conditions that are already in our code. By the way, even for the plat and petition process, they're already in our code.
No, it's not.
Yes, they are. So
you cannot.
Technically, if a business, and I have sat through countless hours of excise commission meetings lately, the last year, and meeting with hearing officers, meeting with 2 different excise commissioners now. This is not new.
Let me ask you this.
Like,
how do you get a liquor
allowed
license?
underneath our excise process.
How do you get a liquor license?
So the excise law, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner, feel free to, chime in, but a business can already, underneath the current process where they have to go out and collect signatures, can be deemed a disorderly place.
Okay, stop
right there.
You're right.
It can be deemed a nuisance.
I'm with you 100%.
And they can continue to get that license.
They have to go before the community and get signatures, right?
This doesn't change anything with regard to that, except making it easier for those types of businesses to continue to operate with their license.
It does not.
It absolutely does.
It absolutely does not.
It absolutely does.
Let me ask you this. We currently have a transfer going back to 14.06.330. Let me tell you a situation. 5750 Natural Bridge, when it was a mobile station, the owner did everything he could to move people away, the drug dealers, and, get away. It was identified as a nuisance. He did everything right. You know what happened to him? He was assassinated. Okay? He was assassinated at Goodfellow and Highway 70. So his wife, still living, bless her heart, I would have got out the neighborhood. We did a simple transfer. Because this allowed that, because it's in the case of a death of a person, under these provisions, that we could transfer that. Now, under what we're saying, and listening to you, because I'm a little confused, if it was a nuisance, then we shouldn't even did the transfer. But it was so unfortunate what happened to that family. And we're saying, let's make it easy to do business.
How does this change that, Alderman? This doesn't
No, no,
change that at all.
what I'm gonna go back to is what you're saying. You are against a transfer for a good, legitimate business. That's what
No,
I hear.
I actually specifically said that I am fine with that.
Then this is a
However,
good bill.
this doesn't do anything except make it easier for bad businesses to continue.
It does not.
The process that you just described is our current process.
And this
She was
enhances
able
it.
to get a change of ownership exception based on her circumstances. That's underneath our current, this does not
So this
change
is gonna
that
add,
situation.
this is gonna add to that section and say,
That
look,
does not-
if you're a
that-
good
that
business,
widow-
I'm done.
Was
Are we-
able to get her license renewed.
I'm done. I can't,
Yeah, without
I can't make it any
transfers.
more
No other
clear, Mr.
questions on
Chairman.
this then?
So.
Okay, then.
I'm finished as well.
Thank you. We're holding the bill today.
Yeah,
all
and
holding
we need to. And this was healthy discussion
Mm-hmm.
to make it a lot better. You know, absolutely. But I'm just kind of confused at the
We
tail
do-
end of the hearing.
We did have one person who
Sign up. Yeah, I think we
that
should.
wanted to speak on it.
Okay.
So we'll give them the opportunity, and then we'll close this out. Also, as a courtesy to the Alderman from the 7th, Mr. Jared Opsel, yeah, would you please sign in also?
No problem, thank you.
You're the, I believe, the president or chair of the Downtown Neighborhood Association?
Jared Opsel, the executive director of the Downtown Neighborhood
executive
Association. Yeah, so let's see here. I have to say pro or con, huh? All right.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah, it's right down there.
I'm pretty sure.
I appreciate you allowing me to speak. I know you were not taking official public comment, so I'll be very brief for you. Just to take a step back, let's just remind ourselves that alcohol is an addictive substance. It causes hundreds of millions of dollars of damage to our country every single year. This is dictated from studies from SAMHSA, the federal government. So this isn't just business. This is business selling an addictive substance that can cause many problems in a community. We've heard many people bring up the problems that these places can cause that sell this substance. The current system as it stands is, I will admit, at least in our neighborhood, difficult to open a business that sells alcohol. It's also very difficult to protest a business that sells alcohol. But it's at least an even playing field. We've gone through situations where we'll spend months collecting signatures to protest a license, and under the previous commissioner, we'd get in front of that person with the hearing and go through it, and the commissioner can just toss out the protest. That's the way our current system is set up. So even when the community does go through all that work to put something together to try and close a nuisance property, it can still be tossed out under the way the system is currently managed. So with that uneven playing field, you know, when you make it easier to open up a place that could cause problems, and you make it easier to subvert the neighborhood consent process, that opens it up to have someone who is a potential poor operator come in and take over a business that might not have been a problem, but everyone knows they were causing problems in other places they used to run. And there's no oversight with that, the way the bill is currently written. So that's extremely concerning. And with downtown, there's over 100 liquor licenses just in our neighborhood. So we see this on a regular basis. We're dealing with problem properties and nuisances on a monthly basis with different places, even when they're doing their best to run a good business. Problems arise from that because when people start drinking, as I think many people know, they start doing things that they maybe shouldn't be doing outside of that. So, you know, this is a very complicated issue, and it needs a lot more consideration to avoid causing more problems than this bill purports to solve. And right now, this bill is going to be causing more problems the way it is written. So that's my statement for you. If you have any questions, I'm free to answer them.
No, that'll do it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm. So
Close real
if
quick.
you would just,
Yeah, so we're
Closing
gonna
statements.
we're gonna hold this.
we're going to hold it. Mhm.
You know, Alderman Coder's gonna we're gonna work with the excise commissioner and go through this a little bit more complicated, but I'll still go back to my thing that I said earlier. This is also, I know because it's coming in front of legislation, a group that feels that we should be able to sell, grow, and without any regulation, marijuana. Not that that's in this bill. So, you know, I would just say that we'll work through this. I hope that everybody keeps that in mind as we're working through the marijuana bills.
Alderman, when you're saying that and looking at me.
No, I'm not, I
First of all,
apologize.
I'm legalize, regulate, and tax is my philosophy on that particular issue.
Absolutely, by the state.
Legalize, regulate, tax, okay?
Okay.
The current bill
Just to
doesn't-
clarify.
Right, and I apologize, I didn't mean to be looking in any one direction, because I agree with that.
Okay?
If they do it, the state, I agree with it, but I'm just saying,
You complete?
anyway,
right.
I'm going off the chart there. So we'll just, I would ask
We'll hold the
to
bill.
hold it, and we'll work on it.
Okay, thank you.
If I would-
We were scheduled to have Ms. Trish Gordon in today from the United Way. She is out sick, and so we have to schedule her. She was going to come in and talk about their scoring process for Prop S. She's out ill today, and we did get an email from her, and we'll just have a time to reschedule with her for this session. Okay, that completes our agenda for today. Therefore, the meeting is adjourned.